This conference will now be recorded.
What's that button? New notes. Look at that. All right. Well, it is 5:32. We are meeting for the Finance Committee meeting on April 12th, 2021. Oh, that just sounds weird. We have Julia O'Rourke, Sally Bennett, and myself present. And come on, agenda. Sorry, computer's taking a minute here. All right. So let's go ahead and start here with the approval of the minutes. There were 3 meetings worth of minutes that we need to approve: March 8th, July 9th, and November 9th. They were missed in approving them at one point or another. Did you get a chance to look at those, Julie?
I did. I'll move to approve.
Can we approve all 3 at once?
Sure. Sally says yes, it's yes. I move to approve all 3 sets of minutes on the agenda.
Sounds great. Jeremy Graham will second that motion. A roll call, Julie?
Yes.
Jeremy says yes as well. Those are approved. Number 2, conflicts of interest.
None.
None.
Number 3 is public comment. There was nobody here, nobody signed up, so we're good on that. Number 4, the Azoa Government Solutions update.
I do have just a quick update. I received an email on March 29th from my contact, and it was a canned email to all municipalities that have that back tax due from ComEd. And it said that they actually had a senator propose a bill, and it was passed in their committee, and they were looking for the leaders to support it. So I forwarded it to Frank, and he hasn't responded, but it's kind of just volleyed to him for now, but I just wanted to update you on that. So I don't know if that means we'll see anything. It's just another step in the process.
Well, at least we're moving forward. It's exciting. All right, moving on to number 5 is the 2020 audit.
The audit has not begun yet. We were told end of April. Mark and I are actually meeting tomorrow to work on it, and I've been sending him information off site. So we'll both be in the office tomorrow. I'll let you know as it progresses.
Sounds great. Now, it was the end of March when we were no longer allowed to do stuff with the 2020 budget. Is that correct?
End of February.
February. Okay. Perfect. All right. Moving on to number 6, then this meeting's flying. The 2021 budget. Let's see. Trying to think if I had anything big with that.
The only question I saw when I looked at, we're talking about the year-to-date numbers, I assume here, right? So I think we brought this up last month and I'm just forgetting, but the office salaries seem to be on the high side still. They should be at like 25%, but they're at 35%.
Wasn't that something to do with the way the village clerk was paid, and it's a different line item kind of thing?
I actually fixed the deputy clerk salary. My assumption is that we have more money going out for the temp thing for the overall year. So once the time frame of paying first and the employee salary is up, then I think it'll catch up. But I I could look into that.
So that makes sense too. 'Cause we're paying a lot more now, and then we would obviously.
Yeah, that makes some sense.
Mm-mm-mm.
My input was just going to be that the overall percentage from the village revenue sheet is at 27.35%, and our expenses are at, or the budget itself is at 25% at this point in time. So we're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hey, Sally,
And-
can I ask a question here? In police committee, there was some commentary about, Nick and, not Stan, Nick and Jeff were at that conference. So they, of course, talked to other people at that conference. And you know how the legislation passed and we got a lot of police salary reimbursement, last year. I kind of am under the impression that that was an easy way to get municipalities money. Not necessarily that it was intended to go right into a police budget, but some people are saying, well, we got new radios because of that. We got new this and we got new that. And in police committee, I kind of said, well, yeah, but our municipality has got a different situation. We have to manage the money as a whole. But is that your kind of understanding of that legislation and why it happened the way it did?
Right. We were allowed to claim those police salaries as a way to get reimbursement from the grant, but I mean, so technically that offset what we had already paid those officers and put that money in the general fund. So we do not have any obligation to then use it for police equipment.
Right. And I think that's just some of the feedback that they got. Well, every municipality obviously has their own set of circumstances, their own financial situations. That being said, I said, I can't promise you anything, but if you think there are things that are lacking that you absolutely need, get your list together. But unfortunately, that should have been done at budget time, So,
Right.
I'll let them think through some things. But to me, as I think about it, that legislation was just a way to get money to municipalities quickly. It was something that was palatable to sell, easy to sell. We're just going to replace these, instead of us nickel and diming and finding money for COVID related, it was an easy way to pass a quick legislation.
And we did that as a way to collect it within that time period fast because
Right.
we weren't sure where those deadlines were going to end up, and it actually turned out that they gave another year to do it. But yeah, and that's something that's definitely on my list. Kelly has been earmarking things like that are COVID related even now because we haven't, there may be more money in the future. And with this other grant that Frank mentioned, I don't know what type of proof we'll have to have. So I stopped tracking it myself, but all of these things are out there for me to go and find and put together a good list. So I know that, we can definitely find a way to offset it, future money too. So
Yeah.
I don't know who is saying what municipalities are like, oh, that's got to be for police, because I never heard anything like that. And I talk to treasurers all the time. So,
Yeah. Well, I think people that are flush, and they have I'd love to have this on my list. We all would be in that bucket, but we just have other obligations we've got to throw into the mix. Okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't thinking wrong about that.
Nope. Hi, Lori.
Hi.
Lori, how is everyone?
Oh, I think she'll survive, but she is a ginormous goose egg and it's all, the blood vessels are all broken. It looks terrible. So
Oh, no.
that happens when they don't wear their face masks. So,
Was it Sarah or Ella?
It was Anna, her friend Anna. Ella hit her.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah, my daughter's the bully that throws softballs at.
this,
So sorry I was late.
Oh, no, not a problem. Just to catch you up on what you missed here, we approved all the minutes that we forgot to approve before. No conflicts of interest. As of our updates on the 29th of March, the law was passed. What did you say?
no, just a bill that passed
bill.
the committee, and they're looking for support to get it to be a law. To hold ComEd accountable for ComEd and other utilities for paying these back taxes.
As far as the audit, it hasn't begun yet. Sally's working with Mark starting tomorrow. And for the budget, it looks pretty good. We brought in 27% of our expected revenues and have spent 25%. So we are right on track.
Sounds good.
All right. Moving on to number 7, the eye drop and the water bill delinquencies. Where was
Oh,
it? You emailed that
Kelly
one
sent
separately.
that.
that's really cleaned up.
Yeah.
So we have to, I know we talked about this once before, policies on when do we just write these things off? I mean, some of those are ancient and they're $25. I don't know if our policies address that or not, Sally, and maybe that was part of the policy manual thing that's been on our agenda. I don't know, but at some point we just say, we're not going to expend it.
It's 5 years.
5 years, okay.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's the same policy. There's another policy for collections, I think, that addresses it.
Okay.
So, but yeah, this report looks great.
Mm-hmm.
And you
And
said one of the accounts is there's a lien in process. And then one has agreed to make payments with one today. Do you know, did they make that payment today or did they just say they would?
I don't know.
Okay. No
It
biggie.
could go either way.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that before Kelly started, we had that lien process like ready to go, but no one had done it before Kelly. So she's really following up and, getting these things taken care of. So kudos to Kelly for that.
Absolutely.
Great.
Any issues, any questions on that one? All right, moving on to number 9, the credit card review of February. Where did you go?
I didn't see anything there.
I didn't see any issues either.
Me either.
All right. All right, moving on to number 10 for the policy project. I know this is something that Sally's been wanting to work on for a long time now, of spending limits for department heads, as we traditionally have been pretty low, and there's a lot of times where there's other leaps and having to contact other people for something simple to purchase. So it was brought up at the Public Works meeting, potentially raising that rate. And then I know that Sally did a whole bunch of investigations. And then you put it all in a fancy spreadsheet of what other communities were doing as well.
Yes. At the end of the Public Works meeting, I think Chad and Mike had mentioned maybe recommending 3,000. But that was just a number that they came up with. I really don't know. I was hoping you guys would would make the decision, but I think 3,000 is a good start for sure. It would be a nice compromise from where we're at.
What's the limit now, Sally?
1,500.
Which, according to your survey here, that's kind of in the ballpark though, right?
Right. Some municipalities, when they sent it back, the information back, they said, please include me in the data that you collect because we need to up ours too. And I'm not saying that just because I'm trying to get my way or anything. A lot of people did say that. It's just, and it's more or less when the public works director makes purchases. I mean, it's becoming quite common for me to have to track down Mike and get signatures beyond this 1,500 because things have gone up in price.
So
And
what's the number? Is 3,000 the number that would cut out a lot of that tracking down?
that's what Chad agreed to. I think so. I think it would definitely help. We could keep monitoring it and just pointing out if we're still over, but some of the things that it was impossible to put like every single policy detail on this spreadsheet, but some of them are a range, and it's because they had different, like for instance, they might be up to 2,000 or 3,000, but then they would still be able to have a limit beyond that if they got 3 quotes. And things like that. And we really don't have any of those limitations right now. So I don't know. I was hoping Chad would attend because I don't know how difficult it is to get 3 quotes for things like meters and fire hydrants or whatever, or maybe he just does it once in the year, or I'm not trying to make things harder, I guess is what I'm saying, but.
Well, if we went to 3,000, we're doubling the current limit, right?
Yes.
And that's, to me, is still being fiscally responsible enough to me as a trustee. I mean, I get it. It's probably been 1,500 for decades, I'm guessing. And prices do go up, and we've got responsible staff. So does it matter if the expense was in the budget or not? Does that play a role, or that he can spend 3,000 on whatever he deems necessary to run the department?
It does matter. Some of the other policies that I read did specify that it had to be budgeted. It's up to the way that we do it now. It is up to the person signing these invoices to come up with the line item that they're using. So that in itself is, and with our budget, we don't really mention every single detail of what they're going to do. So I think that's kind of a given, but we could put that wording in there. But there are a lot of checks and balances in this process, and it's just, it just seems like it's more often now that we're having to get the next person up. And with the pandemic and just the nature of how we do business, it just seems to be more and more often and more of a difficulty in the process. I don't know if you care if they're different for the different departments or if you want those to be the same, but I don't feel like Kelly would probably need to go that high. She's mostly buying office supplies and things like that.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing. I mean, the type of, parts Chad needs to buy to fix the truck are going to be way different than the type of parts Kelly needs to buy to put toner in the printer. And I think the limit should be reflective of the need of the department. And did you say Chad said most everything would be covered by that 3,000? He felt. Was that the three? I missed that number. What you said you discussed.
From my understanding, he said it would be better. There would be less things he would have to get. I'm sure he was looking for more of a 5 or so to really cover more of it. But I know that some of the trustees from the Public Works Department didn't want to go that high. And so 3 was a nice way. You know, what we'll do, if we changed it right now and for the next year or so, we'll see how the 3 works. That eliminates some stuff, some conflicts, and then potentially look at raising it higher. Because somebody had mentioned it at the other meeting as well, we already have multiple, we as a trustees, a board of trustees here already approved the budget, saying this is what you're able to spend it on based off of what they said. And then we're kind of going, okay, well, now we've approved this. Now you have to ask our permission again to spend the money that you already asked and we approved for.
And then it goes through the treasurer and then again on the warrant list. So there really are a lot of eyes on it all the time.
So
Well,
what about
that's
for
why
Jeff?
I was.
Oh, sorry, Lori, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
My only other question was then, I mean, do we have 3 different limits, or do Chad and Jeff have a higher limit and Kelly has a lower limit?
To be honest, I didn't even talk to Jeff. I was going to, and I was just so focused on getting the results from my survey. I haven't asked him what he thinks.
Okay, I know we had something go through. Oh, shoot, let me get my dog out. We went through, we had a $2,500 expense that I thought was kind of silly to even spend our time on. So I mean, I think his limit could definitely go up as well. I offset that with the fact that he's very new in his role. But with all the checks and balances, it's probably okay. And I don't want to start dealing with, well, why do they get more? Why do they get less? You know, they have bigger expenditure items than the office does. So what if we did 3 and whatever you think, 1,000 for Kelly or whatever you think the number is? And we can make that recommendation if it makes sense to everybody.
I think we leave Kelly's the same at 1,500 and we up the other ones to 3,000. I think that will definitely improve the process.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that.
So the other piece to this policy is the purchase order process. And we had talked in another meeting about just eliminating it. Are you still all okay with that, or did you just want to raise it? I just think it's kind of a waste of time, but.
Would you mind walking us through it quickly again? I know we've talked about it, but it's too long ago.
Well, currently the policy is that anything over 500 has to have a purchase order. And because none of those department heads are following the process, I usually have to track them down and backfill these purchase orders. And just the $500 amount is so low, it was just a constant problem.
Why do we have that policy, Sally? Do you know?
Well, I know that we started it because of me, because I was worried about, I wanted it to be a $5,000 purchase order thing back, 10 years ago or whatever. And then one of the trustees at the time, who's no longer on the board, said, no, we need to make it low. We need it to be 500. And the employees that have to follow it do not follow it because they're against it, for one, but also it's just so easy to forget because that number is so low, it affects everything. I mean, our fuel bill for police is like 800 or 900 a month, and it's going up. So they would have to fill out a purchase order request for that every month, and there's just a lot of things like that that are already way over, and it just seems like an unnecessary step.
I guess the trustee that wanted these, there was a reason. I mean, I'm just trying to educate myself. What was, I mean, we don't need it from an audit standpoint? We don't.
We didn't even have a purchase order process until I think that was in 2010 when or maybe 11 when I proposed it. And mostly the reason that I wanted it was because I wasn't being notified. There were all these big things going on and no one was telling me. And so what I've done since then is I've just started attending all the meetings, because otherwise I don't, it's just a big surprise. So I've pretty much solved the problem just by attending meetings and asking to be a part of these conversations.
Okay.
Except I missed the police meeting the other night.
I know,
Sounds like you did.
And of course, we're texting you during the meeting because we needed an answer.
I was getting my hair done, so I missed all those.
Well, I don't know. Does anybody have a strong opinion one way or another? Are you proposing we eliminate the purchase order altogether or go back to your originally proposed $5,000?
I would just like to eliminate it. I see the error in my ways. It was a mistake.
So where are the purchase orders now? Like you create them and then they just go in a binder in your office?
It is a paper system, and that was the other problem. So we just have one binder in a primary location in the front office, and the forms are in triplicate, and the treasurer gets a pink copy, and one copy stays in the book and one copy goes with the person making the purchase. And the guys at the shop never come in and get the purchase order, and they don't know what number is next. And it's a little bit easier for Kelly and Jeff to follow the process because they're physically in the office, but it's just hard for people to remember, and it's so often. And you know, I was in a bad way and I had all these things going on, and then I was trying to get people to fill these out, and it was just sort of ridiculous. So,
well, to me, from an audit standpoint, if you're the one filling them out, that defeats the purpose of the whole system. And
yeah.
Actually, to me, it raises more of a liability that you are filling out the purchase orders for things that you are paying the bills on. And I think you're putting yourself, to me, I think we just need to get rid of it.
I'd be fine with that. It sounds like, Sarah, you've described enough hands-on, eyes-on. You know, as long as we're doing our job, you're doing your job, and the department head's doing their job, nothing should be able to get through. I just pulled up your policy, and it looks like somebody, was this you, Sally, scratched out the whole process, and then have your approval amounts in that policy that we would have to then, we're going to propose a change to these?
Yes, in the yellow part, I think we should. So if we raise 3,000, and I'll have to change those bullets to be specific to the different departments.
Mm-hmm.
Should we raise? Mike had suggested maybe his should be. I
think it was 75, wasn't it?
It would have to be between 3,000 and 7,500 then.
And you don't have to put 3,000. You can put maybe between the anything over the department head's limit up to 7,500. You know what I mean? That'll
Mhm.
capture both limits.
Yep.
Yes.
Isn't it 10,000 or more? It has to be board approved.
It says 5 on here.
And that
5,000
was,
requires board approval.
just, that's not statutory. The only thing that is statutory is the 25,000 for bid that has to go to competitive bid, and that's only for public works. So,
But yeah, the third line though is purchases for items greater than 5,000 require board approval. So what you're thinking, we want to recommend above 7,500?
yes. And again, those will still be on the warrant list. They just don't need to be pre-approved by the board up to that amount.
And the warrant list does not, those are items that have not been paid yet until the board officially
Does it-
approves it, right?
Through the
Right.
consent agenda.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
what? Yes, okay. I'm okay with all those changes. I don't know what Frank or anybody thinks of the limit changes, but it seems reasonable. It probably hasn't been changed in decades. Well, 2014, it says last updated, but who knows what updates were made.
Yeah, we did change it. It was at $1,000 in 2014 for the departments. But what happened was that was when gas prices were really, really high. And Todd was getting these bills that were like $1,100, $1,200 just for department fuel. And that's just such a common thing. It just seemed really silly to be at that 1,000 mark at that time. So that's been 7 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're at the next phase.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
And then further down in the purchase order, you had scratched off about who looks over the credit card policy. Are your thoughts on that, on just having it instead of us looking at it at this committee, that it just goes straight to the consent agenda?
No, at the time, I just thought I'm pretty much listing everybody. But yeah, I guess maybe I should change it so that it shows the progress of going to the finance committee and then to the board. The clerk and the village president sign the check or sign the sheet. So that was the intention of putting them in there. But I'll work on that.
Yeah, that
Okay.
could probably stay as it is, honestly, Sally. Don't waste your time on it.
True.
Now, this is not on the agenda for this month, so we can't bring it before the board. We can discuss it in new business, but we can't bring it before the board for a vote, but we can put it on, if we're happy with this, we can bring it from committee on the on the May's meeting.
Yeah, it might be worthwhile, Jeremy, for you to bring it up in new business and throw the limits out there just to make sure no one has heartburn with them so that we can fly it through next month.
I like it. Sounds good to me.
Like it.
Hopefully it'll be quick because there's a whole lot on that agenda
I
tonight.
know, I think we're gonna be up till midnight. I got my coffee brewing.
I'm gonna make some here shortly.
And
All
I'll
right.
make these changes right away and email them out. And I'll email them to the whole board and just to keep that heartburn from happening.
Sounds good. Any more discussion on the policy project? All right, I don't know how I skipped it, but I skipped number 8, which is the bank reconciliations for February and March here.
Yes, I did not get to look at March.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost done. So I anticipate having March and April next month.
Which is awesome.
February sure does look good though, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I can figure out which tab it is again.
Hey Sally, if you have time before the board meeting, can you email me the final budget? I still haven't got that stupid thing printed out. And I keep losing which version is the final.
Okay.
If you wouldn't, if you are in the office tomorrow, Sally, and you have time, which you probably won't, but if you do have time, if you could print the two color copies again
Mhm.
for everybody, because I keep working off of this one, and it was very close. It's not 100% accurate. And it's easier when I pull up a quick number to have the paper copy. But again, if you don't have time, then I can.
No,
I
I
put
think that's
my
a good
printer at
idea.
home, so now I can print the dumb thing.
That's no problem. I should be able to get that. Julie, do you want you don't need a hard copy, or do you want one in your folder or your mailbox at work?
If you're printing them anyway, yeah, I would love one. And just have one of the police officers run it by my house. Just kidding. I'll have to run in there maybe one day this week.
So I will remove the March reconciliation from the consent agenda from the board meeting.
Yes, please.
No
Wishful
biggie.
thinking on my part.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right. We are doing 100 times better than we were before, and we are right there. Number 11 is the FHLB letter of credit, and it was where did it go? Federal Home Loan Bank of Chicago, who just moved, by the way. It's got an email about that. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Sally, but this is just the same thing that the bank here did, and just basically stating how much we're always able to have.
Yeah, it's pledged collateral for any amounts that we have over what the FDIC will pay in insurance.
And that's just a standard thing we get all the time.
Yes.
Perfect.
It just protects us if the bank goes under, basically.
Correct. And I always think it's ironic because they pledge bonds from other municipalities.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul. Is that how it always works?
Yeah.
All right. And so that is the only actual item on the finance agenda for tonight on the big board meeting. All right. Number 12, Rebuild Illinois Bond Grant.
Were you the one that put this on there, Jeremy?
You know, I think I did. I'm looking at the name. I gotta find my email about it. It was an email that everybody got, and I just wanted to make sure that.
So there are two things that pretty much have the same name. One is a grant that we've been receiving with our MFT funds. And the other one is the grant that we're hoping to get for Public Works, the big dollar amount. And they're two different things, but I think they're called the same thing.
Speaking of that, so Public Works had brought up wanting to do the village wants to do a water study. It hasn't been done in 10 years. And so we're up to do a new one. It costs $10,000 to do, roughly. Wasn't it? Yeah.
I thought it was 18,000.
Was it 18? My point is we did not budget for this item, for this study to be done. It is not technically required. However, we had put the funding aside to get this grant, and we had to match the grant, and that's why we put all that extra money there. What they were going to do with this grant anyway was part of that large grant was the water study. So in essence, we really did budget for it. But that was a large discussion of Public Works of, well, like you look at the line item, we did specifically say we wanted to do this.
What is
So
it
do you guys have
exactly,
any-
Jeremy?
One more time.
What is it exactly?
It's a a water study of their rates and making sure that we are charging what we should be charging and we're comparable with everybody else. And it's, it's just something you do periodically, sort of like what we're doing, what we want to do with the garbage, with the garbage, that 25 cent. Now, there's more involved, I'm sure, with chemicals and things of that nature, but that would be a Public Works Chad answer.
The water studies are typically done by engineering firms, and they compare us with several other municipalities, and they do like a full study and see where we should be with our water rates. We did have it done when we signed the contract with our RWRD, because some of those rates were designed to get us to a point where we'd be able to pay the debt. Somewhere in the middle, Paul Elson changed the format a little bit because that lawsuit with our RWRD gave us more time. So I can understand why we would want to have this rate study done, because I think we could end up in a position where we're not completely ready for dealing with this debt and with regular operations.
So I guess what I'm really asking, we don't need to vote from it as a committee standpoint, but when going back to the Public Works meeting, would we be okay with, while it wasn't technically budgeted as a written, this is what we're doing with it, if the money was going to go to the same thing either way, are we okay with that?
So the money we set aside for the match, if we don't get the grant, that money would be available to pay that 18,000 anyway. And if we did get the grant, it was part of the commingled money that's set aside in the grant anyway, right? So you're telling me we had the money set aside, but we didn't line item it as such, but that was the intention.
Correct. Along with many other things besides just the water study, but
Sure.
yes.
And I believe the water study also has an embedded contingency in it. So there's probably even a little wiggle room there for something, 18,000 in the scheme of that line item it's nothing, it's a blip.
Yeah, I thought when we laid out a spreadsheet with this whole grant thing, all the money was pretty much accounted for with the project, I thought. So I don't remember seeing water study in there, but again, I know 18,000 in the whole scheme of that number is is a rounding error.
And the
Not
other thing
that we shouldn't be transparent and have this, blatant, but yeah, it's a blip.
When do they want to do this, Jeremy?
They wanted to do it sooner, but they said, honestly, we can wait a few months because it takes, all said and done, I want to say it was four-ish months from when they started to being able to analyze all the information. And so having it ready for the budget year and whatnot, we want to have it done before then, but we could not start it until July and still be okay.
Just curious, there's no risk they're going to come back and say, oh, you should have this $2 less a unit than you'd have it today, is there? And then what do you do with that? You paid $18,000 for them telling you to cut your rates. I think we'd be in some serious trouble. And I don't know what you do with that, because I would imagine that's public information, correct? I mean, the public would have access to that study.
Yes, they would.
There's only so much we can do. We got to pay the bill, but that's just, again, I ask questions to further my knowledge about all of this stuff that we have no expertise on whatsoever.
I think the likelihood of that is slim to none, but
okay.
I guess
Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear.
All right. So I guess I'll bring that to the Public Works Committee. And again, this is not, this is not coming from finance, but just in general, if that's where they decide to go with it, we can make it work.
As Lori, do you have any strong feelings one way or another? Lori?
her little icon in the corner, it's not red or green. Like it's normally red if you're muted and then green if you're active. But hers is like gray or white or something.
I'll text, see if she's still with us. Should we move on to the next thing until we connect? I'm texting her.
The only other thing left on the list besides planning our next meeting is the vehicle leasing. So Public Works went through and just talked with some companies, and they're really wanting to push toward leasing vehicles and leasing their fleet. Hey, I think Lori's back.
Sorry, we have terrible cell service in this new house, so just off mid discussion.
And from what they've showed, and that was attached, is it's going to save us a lot of money in the long run. We had discussed at Public Works, if we bring in police, is there a better discount or things of that nature? And they said the company they're going with, there is not a discount. We already get a huge discount for it being municipal. So by adding in the police as well, we're not going to save another, bundle it and save another 20%. Though police, and actually, I believe you guys talked about it at your last meeting, we're also looking into leasing cars instead. Is that
Right?
So I know that the police, according to Chad, the police were having issues trying to find a company that was willing to give us such a small amount. And like there's companies that wouldn't even bother looking at us if we didn't have at least 10, 15 vehicles. But Chad's guy that he was working with, he talked with Nick and they were supposed to get connected and Nick was supposed to call last I heard. So I don't know if there's anything we can really do at this point yet until we get more information, but it seems like this would help us in the long run. Because when we lease the vehicles, it comes with all the snowplow packages, everything else with it. And again, until we get more information.
My dog. Sorry.
So personally, I think we hold this over until next month when the police have had a chance to talk with leasing as well and see if we can do one, sit down with the budget, figure out our sinking costs, our sinking funds and the maintenance, and then compare numbers there. But I think we need all the information first.
Oh, good. Because I started looking at these and I didn't have enough time to really look through this leasing agreement. So they think they're going to save money on them. Because how do you save money on leasing?
So
I think
go ahead.
Sorry. A lot of municipalities like leasing because they have a static budget number for these things instead of buying new and then having to re-up several years later. They just have static items in their budget, and it's always been talked about, but for little municipalities like us, Todd had a very difficult time getting anyone to talk to him because we don't have a fleet, their definition of fleet. So that's always been the big problem.
And now people are willing to work with smaller municipalities.
Yeah, I think that's what Chad's saying. I honestly haven't been able to look at that either. I don't know what kind of deal it is.
Yeah. All right, and then with the lease, all the maintenance costs are embedded in that, so you don't have to budget for any kind of maintenance whatsoever, or do you still pay for new tires and oil changes and all that kind of stuff?
I don't know how that works. I would assume it would be like if you or I got a leased vehicle, all that would be included, but I don't know what kind of stipulations they have for this large equipment that they're talking about, so.
It's- I would like to push it till next month and then have both police and public works here to explain it. We can sit down and maybe even if that's our biggest item, we can sit down with the budget and see how this would work out for the future.
Mhm. It's a good idea.
Sounds good.
All right. Anything in new business? All right. So before we get to our next meeting, I just want to confirm, I'm going to bring up under new business at the board meeting to raise the rates for police and public works for the department heads to 3,000. And then that we're looking at raising the chairs to up to 7,500, but it would be coming forth in May's meeting, as well as removing March reconciliation from the consent agenda. Was there anything else that I missed that needs to be covered at our board meeting?
I don't
I
think so.
can't think of anything.
All right, and that's our next meeting. I have a track meet, our next on the 10th, which is normally when we do our meeting before the board meeting. So I can't make it that day.
And there's
I
no way
can-
to do it on Thursday. That's too early, huh? For you, Sally?
I might be able to do it if it's at 5:30.
Thursday the 6th,
Does that work for everybody?
that works great for me.
I guess I'm not 100% sure. Because I moved, so now I'm not technically in the village anymore, so I don't know. And I mean, I didn't rerun. I think my term was up in May. So I mean, I can make it
You're
work.
leaving
I
us,
just
in
don't
other
know if I'm
words.
still. I just don't know if I'm still allowed. So,
I
Where
don't
do
know
you
whether-
live?
in like Weldon Hills, out off of Weldon and Kelly Road.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, people do anything to get out of this.
Yeah.
Could move one
Hey,
block
right
over.
now you gotta buy the house that you can find because they just are flying off the market. It's crazy. So.
Yeah.
Well, and technically, if you don't make a motion, you would be free to attend and, discuss things, in my opinion. I don't.
I
Okay.
was told by little birdie that will be discussed this evening.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll put it on my calendar and I'll plan on being there and I won't do anything I'm not supposed to do during the meeting.
Sounds great. Well, in that case, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Julia, make
I'll
the
make the
motion.
motion.
Lori will
I'll
make the
second.
motion.
Julie makes the motion, Lori seconds the motion. Roll call. Julie,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
and Jeremy says yes as well. It is 6:26 p.m. All right, everybody, great meeting, and I will see you guys shortly.
Bye.
Have a great
Julie,
night.
Bye.